Okay, I think we'll kick off then. Okay, so hi everyone, welcome to today's discussion. I'm Neve from Performance In, and this is Let's Go Back to the Future, which will feature Honey and a great group of experts. They'll be providing some insights into 2020, the year that changed the way we shop, and giving some inspiration about how to apply the learnings to consumer engagement strategies and to boost ROI. This roundtable will be recorded and a link will be sent over to all the attendees within the next few days. I'm going to hand over to Daniel, who is the partnerships lead at Honey, and he will introduce you to all of today's panelists. Thanks, Daniel.
Awesome, thanks, Neve. Welcome, everybody. And as Neve said, thanks for joining our roundtable today. Super excited to be here with you for what should hopefully be an insight-packed session, essentially recapping on the year that we saw last year and how it affected online shopping and the peak shopping seasons of 2020. We'll be showing some pretty key insights from the shopping behaviour we saw at Honey, along with some interesting perspectives from each of the panellists joining us today. Hopefully by the end of the session, you'll have a better understanding of the key differences we observed last year in online shopping and some of the new strategies and tactics to boost revenue in 2021. As we move through the presentation, feel free to ask questions in the Q&A on Zoom, and we'll pick a couple to answer at the end. So before we get started, let's do a quick round of introductions. I know Neve sort of lightly introduced me there, but just in case for you guys that don't know me, I'm Dan Pilkington, and I'm the partnerships lead here at Honey in the UK and EU, now part of PayPal. I've been with Honey for just coming up to 3 years, and my team's job is essentially to help merchants discover rewards and loyalty solutions that boost online customer engagement, increase AOV, and reduce competitive shopping. And I will hand it over to April.
Hi everyone, so I am the Partnerships Manager at M&M Direct, so I look after all of the affiliate activity as well as the influencer and B2B partnerships. So for those who maybe don't know M&M, we're an online retailer, so purely based online, we don't have any stores. So yeah, that's a bit about us.
Thanks, April.
Hi everyone, I'm Carolina Paradas and I'm the Global Senior Affiliates and CLO Manager at Heather Nichols, so I look after all the global affiliate activity, influencers and car-linked partnerships, so all the kind of financial partners across the world. We're Heather Nichols, we're a luxury retailer, so yeah.
Thanks, Carolina.
And I'm Richard Lane, I'm the UK lead for the eBay Partner Network, so essentially responsible for the UK activity for the in-house network that eBay run alongside all the various global leads that we have.
Awesome, thanks guys. Well, with the intros wrapped up, as I mentioned, we're going to spend a bit of time on some of the key shopping dates and discuss some of the big changes we saw in the way that people shop. We'll spend some of the time looking at Prime Day, Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and then really looking at Christmas the weeks before and after. And then sort of just wrapping up those sort of changes that we saw and how that's impacting what we're doing today. So, you know, lots of opportunity, lots more people shopping online, and really just gaining an understanding from these guys on the panel of how that's impacting how they're doing business today. So, sort of kicking it off with Prime Day, so I'm sure everyone remembers Amazon moved the date of Prime Day from July to October. This shift naturally had an impact on other key shopping dates such as Black Friday and Cyber Monday, as it kind of created a vacuum effect for shoppers typically waiting for those periods. You know, we observed some shopping data at Honey in terms of how our members shop, and we saw that, you know, the insights from Prime Day was that the increase in shopping activity on that day was not really much higher than what we were seeing on non-peak shopping days in 2020 with people shopping online more, which is, you know, a big sort of ode to the impact that the pandemic had on people moving to online. You know, people that traditionally didn't shop online were having to do so without any of the choices. But interestingly, you know, we still observed, even though the impact of Prime Day wasn't much higher on those days compared to other days in the year, compared to the previous year, we saw 1 million more unique visitors shopping via Honey on Prime Day than we did in 2019. And that was with a pretty strong increase in AOV, so people spending a lot more. I think the average AOV across all of our partners, which is around 15,000 partners globally, saw a 110% increase, which is pretty strong for any sort of partner. It'd be great to throw this out to the panel and understand what the impact of Prime Day was from a retailer's perspective. I'm not sure how relevant it is to you guys, but it would be good. Maybe Richard, you could kick us off with sort of if there's an impact for eBay and what you guys typically tend to do around Prime Day.
Sure. Yeah, I'd say in years previous. It's very much one of the kind of the key points in the calendar. We do check out when it is, when it's going to be announced, or all that sort of thing, so we can look to react and be proactive where possible. However, this year was, well, last year was a little bit different. Obviously, when it was budged back later in the year, it took it into the kind of Q4 period, which is key retail period for us. And so I think it's fair to say that we put more of our eggs into the planning for Black Friday basket rather than worrying about what a kind of a competitor is doing in the market. And I think whilst, yes, there was a bit of noise around partners wanting to know what kind of placements we want and what do we want to do, I think it was diluted a little bit because it was pushed back later in the year, and I did feel that there was more of a split between reacting to Prime Day and being proactive for Black Friday. And Black Friday and the Q4 period was definitely where we concentrated.
Interesting. We kind of heard similar from a lot of partners. I think with it being so close to Black Friday, a lot of people had their budget set. You know, it's a completely different quarter and different focus. So I think it really did impact people's ability to get involved in Prime Day, which is kind of what we saw across the board. What about for you, Carolina? Is that something you guys tend to focus on?
So we don't normally really support it or kind of plan around it. But I would say we have seen kind of an increase in terms of sessions and traffic to the site. I just think that day specifically is one day that consumers across the world will be, you know, trying to look for things to buy, more eyeballs on the internet as a whole. So we definitely saw an increase during those 2 days. Interestingly, like I said, we don't really support it, but we definitely saw, you know, globally more people coming onto the site.
Yeah, it seems to be the same sort of feedback that we've had across the board from partners we've spoke to. You know, we definitely had people reaching out to us asking to book placements and to sort of capitalize in the increase in online traffic. But I think overall it was nowhere sort of near what we expected to see based on what we saw in previous years. And I do think, you know, with last year being the year that it was and people having to rely so much heavily online, it probably didn't have the impact that people sort of expected. What about for you, April? Was there much impact for you guys, or was it again sort of very similar, not really much of a focus?
Yeah, it was sort of similar to everyone else, really. We don't tend to focus on Prime Day, just because for us there's so much sort of traffic anyway. We don't tend to put too much budget behind it. But we didn't really see an impact at all of Prime Day this year. We saw obviously increased traffic to the site, just because people were shopping and on the internet more. But definitely we didn't really see the shift that we would normally see just in terms of market share and that going towards Amazon. We didn't really see what we would normally see this year.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think it's a combination, isn't it? It's a combination of the date moving and being in essentially Q4, where people already have budgets set and focuses towards Black Friday. And then just people generally being online more. I know personally, I was sort of shopping all throughout the year, you know, being in lockdowns and not being able to do anything. That's kind of the only thing that was exciting, being able to spend money on stuff online. So I definitely was spending more than what I typically did. I bought a lot of useless stuff that I also didn't need as well.
Feel you on that.
I mean, yeah, obviously.
Cool. Well, I guess we'll kind of move into Black Friday, because I think that's the big one. Black Friday and Cyber Monday. I think that's where people really sort of spend their time. I know from an affiliate point of view anyway. So sort of with Prime Day out of the way and moving into November, obviously the peak shopping period, I think for everybody almost, Black Friday and Cyber Monday, again, knowing that virtually everyone was shopping online more in 2020, how did performance stack up for you? And I'll throw this one out to you, Carolina, first, if you don't mind.
Absolutely. So I think Black Friday and Cyber Monday, you know, it performed really well. We have been kind of putting so much budget towards this as any other retailer. And, you know, we had coverage across the world, etc. And it did really well. But one thing I would say I noticed is specifically for luxury, there is kind of other events now rising, like, for example, Singles Day, which has kind of increased in APAC, in the US, and, you know, even in the UK as well. So I think that kind of took that huge impact that Black Friday would have had in November. And we saw great results, but I don't think the impact that Black Friday has, you know, other previous years would have been the same this year. Also, partly also because of the, you know, other events rising. And the other thing that we did see as well is more people were buying for others. So we saw more gifting being bought during Black Friday. You know, people actually being more mindful perhaps of their spend and and also kind of taking advantage of those Black Friday deals early for Christmas shopping, given that they probably wouldn't have been able to go onto the high street and shop. So yeah, I think it's mixed views. It was definitely a good event, but I think other kind of prime events throughout the year were kind of more impactful.
Yeah, that's some really great points. What about for you guys, Richard? Did you see like any major shifts in categories or people spending differently, or was it still in line with what you'd usually see?
Well, in terms of activity, it was definitely kind of more elongated over the period, rather than a pre-week and post-week kind of period. It was very much back end of October, running up into November, which kind of causes a bit of a headache for us because we're on a fixed marketing budget, and so we've got to plan ahead for that. And whilst I think everyone thinks, oh great, you must be getting more sales, it's like, yeah, but it doesn't necessarily mean we get more budget. So that's something that we have to manage in advance. We're done, because of obviously what was going on and the increased level of activity, we were doing a lot of testing throughout the year, incrementality testing and whatnot, to really show the right value in the right places with the right partners. So when it came to this period, I'd argue we were actually a lot more mindful and a lot more careful with the partners that we were running activity with and where our budget was going, to ensure that we got the right return, rather than thinking, oh, that's always worked in the past, let's try that again. So yeah, there was a lot more kind of detail that went into the planning, even more so than normal. But yeah, going back to the point, there was a definite increase year on year, but it was not so much of a dramatic rise, purely because of the increase in activity overall preceding it.
Yeah, it's really interesting you say that as well. We did a bit of a study on honey partners that work with us, UK, US, sort of global sort of study. And we saw that 65% of partners begin offering Black Friday and Cyber Monday deals from the start of November. So kind of similar to what you said, like they basically, they wanted to take advantage of the sort of longer sale period. And, with the uncertainty in different economies, I think people just wanted to give, consumers every opportunity to get in on the sales and to maximize every opportunity. So we saw lots of merchants reaching out, a bit earlier, starting campaigns at the start of November and sort of having them going beyond the 2 weeks that you normally would see. So it sounds like you guys are sort of doing a similar sort of thing, reacting to the uptick in people wanting to take advantage of deals online.
Yeah, and you'd got also the fact that with all the various kind of lockdowns and tiers, and it got to that point of the year where people are thinking, well, hang on, do we want to hang out in the garden? Let's buy patio heaters and stuff. And so there's a wave of those coming in, and hot tubs and stuff. Just really random things that wouldn't necessarily have been the norm. So there was some quite interesting skews in the run up, to be fair.
Yeah, it's a really interesting point. I wonder I don't know how far you guys dig into the data, but I feel like it'd be pretty interesting to understand the impact of the different lockdowns and the tiers, how it affected people's spending, tier 4, what happened to people in London? Did they start buying more of a particular category versus, people in the north? Probably one for a different discussion, but definitely interesting to understand.
Definitely.
And what about for you, April? What about for M&M? How was it for you guys?
Yeah, so in terms of year on year, it was great. We definitely saw an increase year on year. However, for us, I think peak started earlier this year. So normally Black Friday would sort of trigger more of a peak. So sort of it would carry on into Christmas. However, this year Black Friday sort of marked the end of our peak. We saw a steady sort of decline after Black Friday, whereas we saw more. So instead of sort of a steep peak, we saw it sort of steadily grow a lot earlier than we would have in previous years. And we don't offer sort of Boxing Day sales or anything like that, just because of the way we work. So we don't see that carry on after that. But it was interesting to see that sort of Black Friday marked the end of our peak this year, really.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, it's always a funny one, isn't it? I prior to being at Honey, I spent a couple of years advertiser side, and it was always interesting to see the sort of drop off after Black Friday and those peak shopping periods, and then people getting prepared again for Christmas. You have like one camp of people who are super organised and usually would do all of their Christmas shopping, you would think, around Black Friday and the start of November, and then the other camp, sort of capitalising on those people that are making use of the purchases in December.
Yeah. Yeah, we saw a lot of people buy sort of gifting and stuff a lot earlier this year. So rather than sort of waiting for Black Friday, they were purchasing a lot earlier. And I don't know if that was to do with lockdown or the government sort of encouraging shopping early because of shops maybe not being open, but people still just doing it online. But it was a really interesting peak this year.
Yeah, for sure. What about for Harvey Nicks, Carolina? Sort of, did you guys see shifts in what people were buying, or people doing that gifting much earlier?
Yeah, so definitely, like I was saying, we saw people starting to buy gifts literally at the beginning of November. And just to actually go back to that point of how early people started, it was so hard to keep up. I think for a retailer to actually be able to compete in a space in November, it was manic. It was just crazy to see some people started literally from the 1st of November. So that was another challenge really that we saw in the business. But yeah, in terms of gifting, yeah, definitely earlier. And we did see an increase on different categories that we wouldn't have in other years. Like, for example, food and wine and hampers. The demand was so high. Like every week we had to continue on making different hampers, different offers, hat boxes with different kind of gifting. So that kind of increase was incredible to see, because obviously food and wine has always been such a great thing for us to offer, but it was always kind of like that add-on rather than this great massive category for us. So I think it was great to see kind of the potential of food and wine as a whole. And then another one was fragrance. So as you can imagine, when people buy perfume and fragrance as a whole, they don't normally tend to buy online, and ever since lockdown that has become one of our top categories. So it's been great actually to see how that shift onto online. People still want to buy fragrance, etc. They just buy it online now.
Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? I mean, there's so much that the sort of pandemic can account for in terms of the way that people are having to shop, and people, especially when it comes to gifting, things like perfume and stuff that you would normally want to go and have an in-store experience and really understand what you want to buy. Kind of moving into the Christmas stuff, and we can kind of go through sort of how it's impacted this year. But as I said before, I always found the Christmas shopping period, as an advertiser anyway, I'm not sure about for you guys, but I always found it a pretty tricky one. You just got over the heat of Black Friday, you just sort of like recouped and feel like a human being again after working crazy hours with Black Friday, and then you're like scrambling around to get loads of stuff booked in for Christmas. Was it the same this year? I feel like, throwing this one again to you actually, Carolina, with the closure of stores and stuff, how did that impact you guys? Were you wanting to book more activity, or what did it look like?
Yeah, we definitely wanted to book more activity and kind of make sure we had full exposure across the world, really. So we definitely ramped up some of the partnership we've had. We started utilizing like different technologies to kind of make sure when the customer was landing on site, they were kind of directed to the right page, the right product at the right time. Also the customer had the right incentive as well. So things like cross-selling, etc. So yeah, I think there was definitely a lot of that. And there was a lot that came organically as well. So for example, channels like direct and SEO did really well as a whole, because naturally people were trying to get the Christmas gifting in December because they couldn't go to shops. And the other interesting thing, actually, it was for the last minute shoppers, because we saw next day delivery perform its best really during December. So as soon as the lockdown was announced, we kind of saw our next day delivery completely increase. So I guess it was also interesting to see there were still people that perhaps didn't shop as much at the beginning of December, and they still wanted to get their Christmas shopping done. So from a retailer perspective, we just kind of made sure from an e-commerce perspective and offering, etc., we had everything the customer was looking for.
Yeah, for sure. Next day, I was speaking to a partner the other day, and I think they just sort of launched a next day delivery subscription service, I think off the back of seeing the impact of people wanting to order things so quickly and obviously shopping more online. Is that something you think Harvey Nichols will look at doing in the future, or are you sort of expecting the shift to go back?
I think we will always have some of the customers that used to constantly shop in store online, but I do think that customers that will go back to stores would be looking for an experience, which is something we've been really good at for plenty of years. So I think that is what we really need to kind of focus on in the stores, to kind of make sure it's not only your kind of shop around normal experience, is kind of providing the customer with that extra mile, so like personal shopping appointments, events in store, kind of makeovers within the counters. So, you know, motivating the customer to go back to store. But I guess also the tracking, we have put tracking as well to kind of understand what sort of customers go back to store and what kind of customers stay with us through the card linking areas as well.
That's really interesting. I know there's a lot more work being done in the space with partners, especially with a physical presence, understanding, you know, the impact of the online experience on people shopping in stores and how that correlates. So definitely an interesting thing to think about, you know, especially as a sort of multi sort of channel retailer. Richard, what's Christmas like at eBay? You know, is it as big a peak as the shopping period in November? Is it smaller? I'd imagine with the range of products you guys have, people are sort of looking for everything on there.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely no let up, unfortunately. So it is pretty hectic, to be fair. And this year was, again, going back to what the overarching issue was last year for all of us. We actually kind of dig right down into our SMB base, and how those, let's say, slightly less established sellers that we have on the marketplace, we're actually making up for a lot of the activity and kind of plugging the gaps where some of the larger brands couldn't actually fulfill inventory, maybe, or couldn't service them with deliveries, etc. So there's been quite a focus shift for us in terms of focus on our SMBs, and we've plugged some of that into EPN in terms of running some specific campaigns with some of our partners. So that was actually slightly different, especially for EPN in how we focus, because I think normally we focus on the slightly larger brands and more well-known brands for our partners to refer off, basically. But weirdly, in terms of activity, normally, obviously, Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, Boxing Day is pretty big, but year on year, Christmas Eve saw a drop for EPN, and Christmas Day was actually a not insignificant drop of activity as well. And I think this, and I'm touching at straws somewhat, but this must be something to do with the impact of the Christmas Day get together type thing, because then as soon as Boxing Day came along, sales went through the roof, and the period from Boxing Day to New Year was a very significant increase in activity year on year. So I think this is where, for us, we saw a lot of the kind of the magnified impact of what was happening. So it was just an interesting one. It's always busy, but yeah, this year was slightly different than in the past.
And is the sort of sales period from the sort of after Christmas, like Boxing Day, is it usually as longest to the New Year, or did you see it sort of longer this year, people sort of dragging out the sales and purchasing?
Yeah, it definitely was. What has happened in previous years is we may end the year with a multi-seller coupon or something like that, just to kind of end the year with a bit of a high. But this year, activity was so kind of large and voluminous that there wasn't a coupon required to kind of pull the customers in, because the traffic was there, fortunately. So weirdly, it was a really kind of successful period without us having to incentivize the end users like we have done in previous years.
That's really interesting, isn't it? April, what about for you guys? What's Christmas like at M&M Direct? Do you see sort of as big performance as you would in sort of like the November sales, or what does that tend to look like for you?
Yeah, so normally, as I said earlier, we sort of see the build up during November. It hits Black Friday, and then we see like a really big spike for Christmas. However, we just saw, I think M&M shoppers were sort of shopping a lot earlier, so we've had a huge increase on new customers this year. It's been incredible. So we've sort of seen the shift of them sort of waiting for Black Friday and waiting for sort of Christmas deals. And I think because a lot more other retailers were going so early with Black Friday, that it's sort of naturally pushed on to us and our shoppers shopping with us a lot earlier. So we sort of saw everybody do their Christmas shopping in November, and then up to Black Friday, and then it just slowly declined. It wasn't sort of a dramatic decline, but it just slowly trickled off, which is unlike us really for December. But yeah, it was just a bit of a weird one. And then as soon as we hit January and lockdown happened, we've had the biggest January in history for M&M. So it's been really interesting. It's hard to sort of plan around it because you can't quite know what your customer's going to do in a pandemic. But luckily we have some great customers. But for us to be trading this well in January and February is amazing.
Yeah, I mean, we can touch on this shortly as well, but we've been looking at some shopping data from the partners that we work with, and you know, even for us on our side, January has been bigger than November for some partners and some verticals, which, like you say, you know, typically you'd normally see travel being sort of crazy big in January, and you know, fitness as people get into their sort of New Year's resolutions and new routines. But we've seen pretty much increases across the board, and I do think it's tied back to people spending more time at home in the pandemic, and potentially having more disposable income because people aren't spending things on, you know, meals out and drinks and all those really fun things that I forgot how to do now that we've been at home for so long. But it's been really interesting to see the shift and sort of how much people, you know, after having to initially take on shopping online, and even those categories of people that didn't, you know, my grandparents that typically never bought anything online had to pretty much do all of their food shopping and Christmas shopping last year online. It's interesting to see that sort of new adaptation of the internet and online shopping as people move into this year and continue to use it.
Definitely.
Kind of looking at our metrics, and I kind of covered this before, but you know, we did see that there was a bit of a peak going into Christmas, but again, nowhere near what we saw last year. You know, taking a look at the days leading up to Christmas as well as the week after, you know, merchants saw a 28% increase year on year, but compared to the increases we'd seen on all the other holiday shopping days throughout the year, it was nowhere near as big as what we normally see, which I think, April, kind of goes back to your point. You know, we saw generally a lot of people were doing most of their shopping on the lead up to Black Friday, and then it kind of slowly started to trickle off until we hit sort of Boxing Day and that period between Christmas and New Year, where people probably had a lot more time than usual this year to shop around and purchase things. But yeah, very, very interesting perspectives, and really good to sort of understand from the three of you, really, because I think you all come from very different industries and have different experiences of these things. Kind of moving into this year, because I think we've done a lot of recapping on last year, but sort of moving into sort of 2021, there's obviously lots of learnings, there's lots of uncertainty. You know, we still don't know sort of what it looks like in the UK and globally in terms of the pandemic and when we're able to go back to doing the things that we love. But you know, I think generally 2020 was a really strong year for online shopping. You know, we saw massive increases in Honey users. I think our products just become even more relevant to people, you know, especially with, you know, people on furlough and people having to be, you know, a lot more careful with finances. I think it was a lot more important to users to make sure they were paying a fair price. So we naturally saw huge increases in users. But, you know, thinking about pivoting and thinking about how many sort of users we saw shopping online and the shopping behaviors, you know, it really forced us to have a look at sort of what our product suite is and what we're offering. And, you know, the Honey solution is very much geared to giving consumers confidence in shopping online. So, you know, helping them discover best prices, helping them find the best coupon codes and loyalty points, and, you know, in turn for merchants, increasing AOV and conversion rates. But kind of what we've really sort of focused on this year, and it's been a focus for a while, but, you know, really being able to support users' journey at this discovery phase. So helping them make those purchase decisions. We, you know, we recently launched our mobile app in the UK 2 weeks ago on iOS and Android. And that's kind of the start of us being able to sort of support those journeys further up in the funnel. And that's kind of really the focus for us now. How do we continue to build out these products, you know, that help merchants like you guys reach the demand or the new demand, should I say, that we've had since the pandemic. It would be interesting to know kind of like what are the main things that you guys have taken away or what you've had to change. April, I might kick this one off with you if you don't mind.
Yeah. So for us, we've just gained so many new customers last year that sort of our pivoting factor this year, I guess, is to keep those customers re-engaged that we acquired last year. We don't want them to disappear. We want them to sort of be loyal customers. So we're sort of focusing on our site proposition and also focusing on our My Account. We want to encourage our customers to be logged in on their My Account. So just improving that area on the site, really, just to make sure that we keep those customers loyal and that they want to stay with us.
And what about for you guys at Harvey Nicks, Carolina? Obviously, there's an in-store element, I guess, for you guys of what that looks like when you go back. Do you think you're going to continue to push more resource into online?
Yeah, definitely. I think kind of the e-commerce side of the business has proven, you know, how great kind of value we can deliver, not only obviously for online sales, but also for stores, and the amount of tracking and kind of personalization we can do to the customer. So I think we'll continue kind of working on our e-commerce proposition as well. I think the main thing for us also is the personalization of everything. So kind of making sure that we are delivering that same kind of luxurious, high standard journey online as well. So for example, we couldn't do personal shopping because of lockdown, so we launched this virtual concierge service, of which customers can basically sign up and a stylist will call them via Zoom. So kind of, I think, continue to innovate our services that are available, you know, both online and in store. And I think another key thing for us would be continue, you know, being really flexible and working with our partners really closely. I mean, I'm sure I speak for all retailers really this year that we couldn't have got through without our partners. So I think continue to be flexible and trialing new things, you know, new technology, AI within our site, etc. So I think those two things would be the most takeaways for me.
Yeah, the personalization piece is very interesting. I think lots of partners, you know, the conversations we're having, I think, you know, with the uptick in online shopping, people are wanting to make the most of those new customers coming to site and making sure that those experiences are as personal as they can. I think especially for brands like Harvey Nicks, you know, where your product is, you know, luxury, higher price pointed, and people are, you know, usually sort of used to going in store to make these kind of purchases. It's very interesting to try and mirror that experience somewhat as you can online. Rich, what about for eBay? I mean, you guys sell millions of different products across different categories. You know, what are the biggest takeaways or changes you're having to make this year?
Yeah, I think there's a handful, to be fair. I mentioned earlier on about the testing. So last year, with the kind of increased pressure on budget, to be fair, and the kind of the increased spotlight on how that budget is spent, has meant that even within, not just within EPN, but EPN within all the other channels, it's how is literally every pound we're spending, how is it being spent, and how is that incremental value stacking up against all the other channels. And you know, obviously we're coming from a kind of ROI positive on the whole kind of channel, but even that is not good enough. It's like how much. So that kind of increased focus has meant that there's a lot more ongoing testing with partners. There's kind of ongoing, obviously PLA is a big thing that we do within EPN, and that is we're always doing ongoing tests with that. And then moving into this year, there's going to be an increased focus on kind of incrementality testing, the value of the different audiences that EPN brings in. With that in mind, it's audiences, like was just being said, it's very much you know, a lot of new buyers and sellers are coming onto the platform, and it's how you treat those now, how you keep them on, and what value are you bringing. So we're doing a lot of digging around into research and insights into who those audience segments are, which segments bring what value, what categories are they interested in, and then it's a case of, right, now we've got a bit more insight into our partners and the value that they're bringing. How can we figure out which partners to use to target which audience types? So, you know, that's a really big focus for us. And then I'd say eBay as a whole, I think it's fair to say, kind of, and it sounds a bit cheesy, but community is a big thing for us. I think last year made a lot of us kind of reflect in different scenarios, whether it's at work, at home, family, whatever. And eBay really tried to kind of take its place within that scenario, whether it's the seller community, the buyer community, whether it's, for example, that we ran a couple of charities around Black Lives Matter and NHS Heroes, and kind of raised some great numbers for charity. And it's thinking, well, hang on, we don't just want to be a platform just to buy and sell things. It's what value can we bring to the user and the seller and the buyer into their own kind of day-to-day life. So that's a big focus for us as well. There's some awesome kind of smaller seller stories that have come out of the past year, and people that had never sold before. Now it's their business on eBay because they'd unfortunately lost their previous job and things like that. So it's really plugging us into people's everyday life where we can, and for the right reasons.
Yeah, and that's really interesting, Rich. It's really great to hear some of the stuff that eBay's doing to support sort of wider social issues. I think it's quite interesting. I think last year was tough because of the pandemic, but obviously so many other things happened last year as well that I think really forced people to take a step back. And I think from the conversations I've had with brands and partners, I think a lot of it now is, obviously, how can we reach our goals? How can we grow revenue and all these things which people generally focus on? But also, how can we do things that are for the greater good of like society, and how can we impact people's lives in a positive way outside of being able to sell them something online or whatever it is they're looking for. And it's kind of been the theme at PayPal for the last year as well of what can we do outside of offering our platform for people to sort of send money worldwide or to use Honey for shopping or whatever else. Like, what can we do as a platform with this reach to create greater good in societies and groups? So it's really nice to hear that eBay are doing the same thing as well, and I think it seems to be a theme that we're sort of seeing across lots of different businesses. Sort of going to you, April. We haven't really touched on it too much. What's the main things that are changing for you this year? Is there a greater focus on a particular channel, or with an affiliate, is there sort of a greater focus on a particular type or a way of promoting? What does it look like for you in terms of 2021?
So for us, I guess it's trialing all different new types of partners. We've seen quite a shift to card-linked partners recently. So we're putting quite a lot of focus into that and how that now works in the affiliate world, I guess, because it's completely different to tracking obviously normal affiliate types. So how that works together, and then working out sort of which partners are best for which segment, but also what our new audiences look like Richard said, and how we can sort of make sure we're personalized to them, but also which partner do they suit. We're seeing a lot of younger demographics coming to us now. So it's sort of working out if it's good that we should be working with influencers to target those. And if we can work with partners in a different way, I think we've really tried to sort of think outside of the box of how we're working with our partners. For stuff like, can we be doing influencer stuff with our partners now? Is it something that is what our younger demographic wants? But also we need to think about our original demographic, our older sort of demographic, and they might not like that. So we need to make sure that everything we're doing across the partnership channel works for our audience. So for me, it's really focusing on that and new types of partners that we can reach them with, really.
Yeah, it's interesting you touch on the influencer stuff as well. I think, from a Honey perspective, we've had lots of requests from partners wanting to know. I think, voucher and loyalty and all of those traditional sort of affiliate models still have a very, very important place. We see lots of strong results with partners optimizing using our loyalty and voucher solutions. But I definitely think there is opportunity as well to leverage different audiences, like influencer and different ways of engaging with members. We recently started launching some co-marketing where we allow brands to engage with the sort of Honey target audience. We do lots of campaigns on YouTube and podcasts on Spotify, and really finding ways that not only to drive value through our sort of traditional shopping solutions, which is where users are really sort of expecting the Honey experience, but also being able to put the brands that we work with most closely in front of our target audience to sort of encourage them to shop with those brands and to use our solutions. So definitely, great to hear that's a focus for you guys. I think it's more and more coming up. Brands are looking for more innovative ways outside of the traditional sort of partnership ways in the affiliate channel, especially to work with brands and leverage their audiences.
Definitely.
Caroline, I was going to sort of ask you, what's sort of your focus? When we're looking at affiliate and sort of performance partners in particular, is there a particular strategy you're going after this year in terms of the type of partner you're wanting to work with, what you're looking for?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we need to continue working on the kind of varied portfolio. We've always, tried to make sure that we are working in within different parts of the affiliate channel, etc. So if we want to focus on acquisition and, last click revenue, obviously we go to all our incentive partners, cashback, etc. But then we also work really closely with the likes of top funnel activities, so editorial influencers as well, and shopping partners. So really making sure that we have an ecosystem that touches like every point of the marketing funnel, and therefore deliver a sale, but also like the value to the business. I think another side of the affiliate channel that we're going to explore this year is the CRM perspective. So really understanding how the channel can deliver valuable leads and how we track it. So understanding how we kind of match CPA and CPL tracking and how we kind of deliver that back on data acquisition as such. Because like April was saying, so we've acquired so many customers this year. So we really want to understand how not only acquire the customer, but how do we make them, you know, part of our loyalty program? How do we make them come back for second, third purchase? You know, any special occasion, etc. So I guess it's just kind of unifying all those points, and like I said, different parts of the marketing funnel, and making sure we all adding value to each channel.
Yeah,
I think,
sure.
I was going to say an interesting one is, I think what was going on last year is that it's been quite disruptive to some of the kind of the status quo of your standard affiliate channels. And what we found is that especially where, let's say, your traditional content partners, where ad spend was perhaps being pulled from other advertisers, they're then in a position where they've got to look for places to fill that gap, and perhaps becoming a bit more amenable to performance-based activity, and that has led to, let's say, the more performance world thinking, well, hang on, how do we really work in this kind of display kind of environment? And so I think there's been quite a bit of movement in that regard, and a bit of compromise on various different sides. And I think that's something that we'll certainly be kind of looking more into as the year progresses as well.
Yeah, I agree. I think, you know, from our side, there's, you know, we get perspective from a lot of different merchants in different verticals. And I think the overarching theme that we see was, you know, last year there was so many more people shopping online. There was, you know, crazy increases in traffic that merchants were trying to meet the volumes of. And I think this year it's so much more about efficiency. You know, we have these customers, we know we have all this additional traffic. Like, how do we make it efficient? How do we maximize conversions? How do we make sure that we're making use of all the traffic coming to our sites? And I think second to that, what we've been seeing is more merchants also wanting to really nail down on the ROI, like you said earlier, Richard, you know, wanting to understand, you know, if I spend this, what do I get back? And really being able to tie that performance back, rather than just say, you know, here's 5K or whatever, see what you can do and not really know what the impact. So it's definitely been a combination of the two, you know, merchants wanting to make sure they're making the most of the traffic they're getting, but also understanding, you know, what am I paying for, what am I getting, and what value is that driving to my overall program.
Definitely, and I actually really agree with Richard in that sense. As obviously the e-commerce platform continues to grow, you actually have so much more attention, at least from my side. Obviously now we're the only door trading, so absolutely all eyes on online, absolutely all eyes on affiliates, and you know what you drive in, what sort of content, and many more people kind of involved in it. So I think, yes, as the investment grows, so the pressure, I suppose. So I think that's also kind of a trend that we'll see in performance marketing as this year goes, really.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I really do expect, I mean, I think we're already seeing it now, but I really do expect an increase in advertisers generally wanting to work on more performance-led solutions, where they can see the direct impact of what they're spending. Awesome. I know we've kind of hit that time. We're sort of bang on time now. So kind of wanted to wrap up and just say, you know, thank you all so much for joining our roundtable, and huge thanks to the panelists, you know, Richard, April, Carolina. It was really good to get your guys' perspectives and understand, you know, what the impact has been to you guys and some of the changes you're making this year. I know we were trying to sort of get some time for questions. I popped my email address on screen if anybody in the audience has questions, and I can make sure we get those answers for you. But yeah, I just wanted to thank you all again. Thank you guys for joining, and thank you, April, Carolina, and Richard, for being on the panel.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye. Bye.